Yeah, welcome to the first open lecture of the World Changers in Tech series in 2023. Happy New Year. Who of you has ever been to one of our open lectures before? Wow, so many new faces. Oh, that's great. So a few words about GERMANTECH. We are a service provider, so providing services along the value chain of innovation. So we do a lot of executive education, company building with corporates and SMEs. But we also want to foster education around the topic of entrepreneurship. That's why we conduct events like this. And tonight I'm super happy that we have an entrepreneur from our network that will share his path into the world of entrepreneurship and maybe inspire you. I also want to thank Michael, who is here today from the Stiftung Bildung Werte Leben, who is the owner of this beautiful building and who hosts us tonight. Thank you so much. And yeah, Arnas, I don't know how long we know each other, but it's been before you became an entrepreneur for sure.
For sure.
Yeah, so it must be a few years. And I'm very, very curious to hear the story again and to hear the story from another angle. It's always interesting also for me to hear how the people tell the stories themselves. So he will talk about his path, and then there will also be, of course, time for Q&A. You can ask any questions. And yeah, have fun. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much, Maria, for inviting me. My name is Arnas Bräutigam. I'm from Berlin, and when Maria asked me if I wanted to be here to speak as like the solo person on the stage and the topic being just me, I felt like, okay, I wouldn't know what to talk about, or I didn't really feel like, do people want to hear that from me? I didn't ever consider myself to be like a stage-worthy person. But then I realized, okay, when I was maybe 20, 25, 26, starting my career after university, I probably thought that the 40-year-olds, they have seen a lot of stuff, and but they still have a lot of years before them, so they are in a very good age to talk about their learnings. And then I realized, okay, I'm now 40. That means, well, okay, I got to do it. So I'm really happy to be here today talking to you about some of the moments during the last, let's say, 15 years or so that actually small bits by small bits defined my path to where I am today. What is that, where I am today? I'm the co-founder of a company called startupdetector. Detector basically is a big startup and investor database, which we get from the German commercial register. And we provide basically startup information services to whoever needs it, for example, VCs. On the other hand, Added Value is a pre-seed startup matching platform where business angels and startups can connect, hence also the title of the presentation. And so I'm this founder. We have so far successfully bootstrapped to 10 people and 500K yearly revenue for the last 2 years, basically each. Being profitable, that gives me a very comfortable position right now, that I'm not dependent on venture capital or anything. But I'm actually working with a lot of venture capital topics, so we're going to dive a bit into this. So basically, as I said, yesterday I took more than 3 hours to reflect a bit on the moments and the pivotal points in the last years where maybe things changed, or where looking back I felt like, okay, this was actually a moment in another step basically in my becoming an entrepreneur, sometimes even without knowing it, or oftentimes even without knowing it at the time. So don't worry, I'm not going to talk for 3 hours. It just took me so long. And none of these moments are by any means glamorous, or like big fundings or Forbes, whatever, under whatever, or something like that. And that's why, again, I felt, okay, why am I really here? But maybe if you will indulge me, I can give you these little anecdotes. I've tried to make them interesting or look at the really interesting parts. And of course, I feel like I'm a really captivating orator, but let me know if it's too boring or if you feel like I should skip a part and come to the juicy parts at the end. I will not want to bore you. Let's keep this short and fun. And in the end, obviously, there's a Q&A, but if you feel like asking anything in between, I'm absolutely open to this, because what I have on my slides is just a reference point for me, a reference framework for me to remember what I want to talk about or can talk about. But if you guys want to know anything else, then it's your time, not my time. So just to get a feel about you, maybe can you raise hands? Who of you is a startup founder? Okay, good. Who of you, or a founder, whatever, a founder. Who of you is thinking about being or wants to be a startup founder or founder? All right, maybe everybody, I don't know, there were maybe a few people who didn't raise their hand. Why are you guys here today? Just no, really out of curiosity? Okay, good. I see. Good. Anybody else who wants to has a special interest today? Maybe I can keep this in mind when selecting the stories. Or otherwise, we'll just jump into it. So I'm not sure. Can you see this even with the lights? Okay, right. So as I said, my name is Arnas Bräutigam. I found the term East Coast founder quite interesting. It was recently kind of coined by some people on LinkedIn. I know it means I'm from East Germany. I was born in '82. As I said, I'm 40 years old now, and I lived the first 7 years in East Berlin with the walls still intact. And then after reunification, obviously this was not a topic anymore. My family is absolutely non-entrepreneurial at all. I was basically set on a course to potentially become a musician, because my father was a professional violinist, or was a professional violinist. He's retired now, and I learned the violin for several years, like basically all my childhood. But later on, like when it was becoming serious at the end of school, I decided, okay, this is not the path for me. I'd rather go into, at the time, I was planning to go into the diplomatic service because I liked international stuff. But I then actually ended up in banking, and now, several years ago, I chose to leave banking and take the entrepreneurial path instead. And in the coming slides and minutes, and not hours, I'm going to let you know exactly what led me to through this maybe not so super common journey. Basically, those are the topics that I have. Those were some thoughts maybe that maybe not literally were in my mind at these times, but that could have been the thought of my thoughts at the time. For example, business is more interesting than I imagined. Back in 2006, I spent a year in Beijing in China because I had always loved learning foreign languages, and Chinese was something I had wanted to pick up, but it was not enough to do it in Germany because Chinese is so hard, so I decided to go abroad for a year, pause my studies of economics, and spent a year in Beijing learning Chinese. And it was a really exciting year. I actually met my wife there, who is from Leipzig, but we met in Beijing. I did a lot of sports like Kung Fu, and I cycled a lot because my apartment was so far away from the university and buses were so slow that I got really fit at that time. And at the end of that year, which was really fun, and I was only like enjoying everything, learning languages, traveling, etc., I realized, okay, maybe I should look for an internship or something, because it cannot always only be fun. I need to do something serious. And me wanting to become a diplomat, I applied at all the embassies all over Asia, and all of them said, we don't take interns right now. And that's why my plan B was just to apply for any kind of German company I found on the internet at the time, who was operating in Beijing. And I only got one email back, which actually I first deleted because I thought it was spam. Because they had really strange email addresses at the time, and they offered me an internship, and that was at the DEG, the German Development Company or something. It's a part of the KfW, KfW Bankengruppe. It's part of it's a developmental financing agency. And my question then was like, okay, I'm an economics student. I had always been proud of studying economics, not business. For me, business students were people in pink polo shirts, and I did not technically despise them, but I thought like, okay, business, I calculate with letters, not numbers, and that is much better than business. And they offered me a finance internship there, so I was like, okay, either do this and do something serious, or I had thought about going to Japan for just traveling, but then my now wife told me like, you need to be serious, take this internship. So I took it, and I actually enjoyed it quite a bit, because among other things which I learned there was that I was tasked to do some research on a potential deal that they had found really attractive with the Chinese companies producing antibiotics. And the thing I found out when doing the research is that actually those antibiotics were banned in the EU. So I told them, guys, the company may look great, but they're producing stuff that is not allowed in the EU because it's used to like to give to animals as a prevention, and that is not allowed here. You can only drug animals with antibiotics if they're really sick. And so the deal was actually cancelled, but everybody was happy because they had avoided a much bigger disaster, PR disaster and so on. And that was, the whole internship was like, okay, business may not be so bad, and it's actually international. It can be international. From my limited family perspective, I had only known about, for example, diplomatic service. So I learned there also a bit more finance stuff, like the difference between bonds and loans and equity and so on, which then later proved to be useful. So last thing, stuff that I learned in China, basically to also wear rosé, lavender, lilac, and salmon shirts, because after I had always thought this was a business thing, obviously I needed to go to one of the markets and buy some shirts of my own. And also I learned to do grown-up stuff there, because I had to rent my own apartment and like move together first time with my now wife and stuff like this. So it was really a very, very good time for me there in China. 2 years later, basically, I finished my studies here in Berlin at Humboldt University. Still officially economics, but mostly with the business part. I had, like, if I had the chance to switch, I probably would have, but I finished economics. So I was still, like, convinced I need an international job, so I was really happy that I found a position in one of the Berlin, the biggest Berlin or most important bank in Berlin. At the time, Landesbank Berlin, LBB here, which is the same basically as Berliner Sparkasse, the big red S that you know all around the city. It's just they were at the time two different brands, and they offered me not an internship, a traineeship, a trainee program with the option to then get a regular job in the international division, and I was happy. I had signed it. I went on a three-week vacation to Mexico just before the job started, and I came back. And in early October, this was for me pre-smartphone era. I came to my job. I was there, hey guys, it's me, the new guy, and everybody was like, who are you again? The world is in chaos. Lehman Brothers had just collapsed. The financial crisis had started, especially in the international division. Nobody was trusting anybody anymore. And for basically 1 year, all new business was shut down. And I was the new guy who was supposed to do new business with them. So I then had to wonder, okay, what do I do? First of all, there was no opportunity to do sales, but I also realized, okay, I didn't even want to do sales, basically, or work with the customers. Instead, I wanted to code, like not code. I'm not a programmer or a professional coder, but I realized that the way that things were being done at the bank was quite manual, and with quite manual I mean very manual. They just copied old documents, Word documents, contracts, and then exchanged some numbers. So I started, okay, this, first of all, I don't understand the documents, I don't know which parts to change, and second of all, this is just too much work. So I started coding some stuff in Excel with Visual Basic and stuff. And all the other colleagues looked at me like, who's this guy? Like, who does he think he is? Like, questioning the ways that we do stuff here, and why does he not do what he's told but does something different? And that's also when I realized one thing, basically, process automation is really good if you can do automate things once and then don't need to do them like again and again and again manually. This saves you time in the long run, but banking, at least this one, is not or was not the right place. It took me like 5 years, then people started using my tool as well, but then I left, so I'm not sure if they continue to use it. I also learned that having a safe job in, Berliner Sparkasse is like super safe, generally, it was at the time the perfect thing for me, because after a few years we got our first child, and even some years before the baby was born, we were already reading books on how to travel with your child when you have a parental leave. And I was like, well, when we have this baby, I'm going to travel like 3 months or 4 months or whatever. And I ended up taking off of work in a total of 15 months for both children, 8 months with the first and 7 months with the second boy. And we traveled, not all the time, all of the time, basically 2 times 3 months, and was super. So I realized, like, at the time, perfect job for me, not too exciting, not too much work, not too much pay either, but decent enough so that I could afford all this. And the last thing, why is there the last learning, board games are not a viable business idea? During that time in the international division, I actually created my first board game that was supposed to teach people how the export finance in the international division works, but in a fun way. And I was really convinced that this is going to be a hit, because it was so clever and so like brainy. And for me, like, I had some of my friends play it, and of course they said, oh yeah, it's great. I'm not sure if they really meant it, but I took it to a professional board game vetting service or something, and they said, yeah, not gonna happen. So this is the first time I actually tried to create my own product. I even registered a website for it, but then it was never produced, so I still have a version of it somewhere, or I might have thrown it away, I'm not sure. But this is nothing you should do, creating board games. Even if you manage to publish one, you only get 10% of the proceeds or so as the author, so don't do that. My time at the international division was then to come to an end, because it was with the renaming of the Landesbank Berlin to only Sparkasse, the division was basically not closed down, but made really, really small. And people told me, like, find a job either inside or outside. And I thought, okay, I do kind of like banking, and I have a good job here. I'm going to look inside first. And one of the two options I considered was working with startups, because I didn't know at the time. I'd never really been excited about startups, but maybe that working with Excel and automation and so made me curious to learn more about innovative new companies. And I actually got the job. But the job was at the time still like Sparkasse is a very traditional bank, and they work with very traditional founders as well, like people who set up shops or restaurants or like craftsmen and so on. And that was most of the business they were doing, giving out loans to those people who newly set up their businesses. But startups, in a sense of scalable, digital, innovative business models, this was only like a very small part. But fortunately enough, at the time, 2015 basically, that was a time when even the people at the Berliner Sparkasse realized that the startup ecosystem had already taken off, and startups could potentially be very interesting and very lucrative clients later on, if they succeed. So like if they do a lot of business, then they use more banking products. So me and my colleague, we were actually the startup team, and we were tasked with finding new startups, convincing founders to come to Berliner Sparkasse, and generally just being visible in the ecosystem to find new startups and convince them to come to Sparkasse. So one of the projects there, and there again is a like glimmer of entrepreneurial thinking with me. One of the projects I tried was creating a co-working space for startups out of an abandoned Sparkasse branch office, basically, Sparkasse location, because at the time Sparkasse was closing down. Not lucrative, money-losing locations, and but some of the lease agreements were still, or many of the lease agreements were still running, and they were still paying for it. And I thought, like, why not put some extra chairs and desks in there and call it a co-working space? This might even get us some cool PR. I was really in love with the idea. It's too much in love, actually, to see that the better idea proposed by one of my colleagues to just go to a regular co-working space and just rent available seats there instead of making everything on your own, buy or build, basically, was much easier for a bank than to operate a co-working space which nobody had any idea about or any expertise to do. So I was on the team. Like, there were two teams, competing teams. The idea generally was accepted, but I was on the team, let's build it. And the other team were on the team, no, let's just buy it. And they won, basically. But fortunately for me, since I was one of the startup bankers, I still got a seat on the co-working space afterwards to be working there sometime. And the whole time, basically, I was kind of open to okay, maybe I'm not going to work at Sparkasse until retirement. Maybe if I meet a cool startup team with a really great game-changing idea, I might be open to do something else. At the time, I was thinking, like, maybe I become a CFO or something, even though I didn't have any background or inclination to do bookkeeping or accounting. But this was kind of my idea. It never actually happened, because there was never any startup that really convinced me to like jump off board. But the work there in the startup team was actually really exciting for me for the first time, basically. That I only realized that after having worked 7 years in the international department, which I always thought to be a really great job, but then I realized I never really enjoyed working. I just knew that it was rationally a good job. I earned enough money. I didn't do overtime most of the time, etc. But I never really loved what I was doing. Whereas with the startups, I felt really excited about coming to work, thinking of new ideas, how to do my work better. And that was the first time that like it hit me, okay, work can be fun, and startups are playing a part in that. Also, I realized as a banker, I'm not part of the startup ecosystem because bankers are not important to startups. VCs are, business angels are, whatever clients are, but banks not. So I was always a bit outside, which was a learning at the time. I didn't like it. I felt like, but I love you. Why don't you love me back? So this was something I realized. And one thing I really learned several times was how important business angels are to early stage founders, because basically whenever I opened an account with the team, they had to come in personally, sign everything. And one of the last things I would ask them, okay, beside the paperwork and the regular banking, is there anything else I could help you with? Maybe Berliner Sparkasse has a large network. Maybe I can help. Oh yeah, do you know some business angels? And then after a few times, I dreaded the answer, because it was always, do you know business angels? And I had to admit that I only knew like 3, 4, or 5 business angels, but didn't know what they were into, if they were interested in this kind of startup or whatever. So I always had to tell them, no, not really, sorry, anything else? And then they didn't have any other issues. So that was my time basically in startup banking. And on the side, during that time, I did some other stuff that is now really going into the already leading to the entrepreneurial part, because even though Startup Detector is my first regular official existing startup, but it's not my first startup idea. And I'm not counting the board game there, because, for example, after I left the international division, I thought like, okay, I had actually over the path of those 7 years gathered quite some know-how about international trade finance, and I knew that there was no relevant or good resource on the web about international trade finance. So if you ever wanted to learn anything about this, or you would end up on a bank's website, and they would only have like 1 or 2 paragraphs, and then call us if you want to know more. And so I decided, okay, Trafima is short for Trade Finance Manager, my super great invention, name invention there. I started a website, basically just a WordPress website, and I created a very, very long and very, very comprehensive online course, basically on everything related to letters of credit. Only a few years later, I realized that the site was actually getting like 5,000 visitors a month for a niche topic, which I thought was quite cool. So after writing it down and then forgetting about it, because I knew I would not be able to monetize it while I was still working at the bank, but I had created like kind of my first digital project. And I had always kept in mind, like, if ever I leave the bank, then I still have this thing in the drawer, basically, and I can take it out and start building around it, making it a business. I still have it today, the website. Its traffic has been going down because all the information is now super old. There have been revisions of the rules, etc. So it's not relevant anymore, and I never used it to build a business. Also because I realized that the business idea behind it was stupid, or at least not stupid, but not viable enough. But this was the first thing I did. And how did I do it? Because I had Fridays off. Like ever since the birth of my second child, I had just basically agreed with my employer that I would only work for 4 days, only get 4 days pay, and that I had Fridays off. And I used this time at the beginning for sports and enjoyment and watching TV, or I don't know what. Later on, then working on different projects. And at the time, like towards the end of my career at Sparkasse, I did one, as I think, cool thing. I offered myself as a free intern for 1 day a week at a startup. and I ended up working like for 3-4 months or so at a Berlin-based e-commerce startup on Fridays for free, just doing some accounting or pre-accounting and learning the ins and outs and just being in a startup. And for me that was really great because yeah, I saw how it is from the inside. As I said, bankers are usually on the outside, but there for the first time I was on the inside and realized, okay, what tools are they using? How are they thinking, etc. And this was shortly before what's coming next. I also did a startup weekend once, and again, another startup idea that I had brought. Do you know Startup Weekend, what this is? It's like basically organized by, for example, Techstars in our case, and they invite mentors and they invite participants, and then they work on startup ideas for like 48 hours with not much sleep. And at the end, they pitched their idea or their startup basically with as much validation as they could muster, and maybe a prototype even in those 48 hours. And I was also again in love with our idea, and the team promised, yeah, we're going to be working on this in the coming months, and then it fell apart within weeks because nobody was actually willing enough to put the work in there. I did some more SEO. I set myself a SEO challenge because one of my clients at as a banker was a catering startup. And I talked to one of their marketing employees once, and they said, yeah, catering for Sommerfest, for summer parties is really important, but we have to pay like really lots of money for advertisement, for paid ads there. And then I thought, okay, I'm going to rank #1 on Google for Sommerfest-Ideen. And I spent a lot of time there, and I actually ranked #1. And then again, I couldn't monetize it for anything, but it's all just fun. And
sorry,
yeah.
did you rank #1 on Sommerfest-Ideen?
Yeah, not on 97. No, no, on Sommerfest-Ideen. Yeah, the art. Yes, of course, that would be easy. Yeah. And no, I thought the order was a little bit different. And then at the end of 2018, basically, I had the idea for Startup Detector. And Felix, who is the guy here, the photo there, is my best friend from like when we were 2 or 3 years old, maybe. Ever since we had been friends. And he's now my technical co-founder. And I asked him, like, I have this idea, Startup Detector. We're going to get data from the commercial register and sell it to whoever needs data about startups. And he was in. And to make everything official and to make everything like legal, I told my bank that, okay, I have a new project now that I will be working on. It's like if you want a side job, you need to register or tell your boss about it. And I felt like super confident that this was no problem because I had done other jobs. For example, in the past, I had for 25 years I've worked in the opera, and it was never a problem. And so I was quite surprised when, like 3 months later, I had not yet received the official go, but I had already started doing it, and then I actually received a warning from my boss, like telling us that the compliance department at the bank does not at all like the idea of me doing Startup Detector, a service that is so closely related to the startup work that I was doing in Sparkasse. And this dragged on a little bit more for a total of 6 months, and then actually ended up in me being asked the question like, okay, which one do you want to continue? Working at the bank or working on your new project? And I was a bit surprised myself that I quit my job then, but it was a very good decision. I had not done this without at least some kind of proof that I would not be dropping into a void that I would not be coming out of. We had done the whole Startup Detector thing for free for some months, And so before quitting the job, I said, okay, if I get 5 clients in the next month to pay for this, like $100 a month, then I'm ready to leave the secure, safe position at the bank and to do my own stuff. And we did not get 5 clients, we got 4 only, but one of them agreed to pay 1 year in advance, and I thought, okay, we'll count that as 5. So that was the end of my more than 10 years at the bank, and was the start of the journey that I'm now still on, Startup Detector. The full freedom that I suddenly had, I exchanged this quite quickly again for some security, because I applied and was accepted, or we applied and were accepted into a incubation program at HWR, the Berlin Startup Incubator, or the Startup Incubator Berlin. This meant we were free. We got like 2,000 euros a month as a scholarship. The only condition was that at least 2 or I don't know 3 days a week we would need to actually be physically present in Spandau. Me living in Mitte, this was not the happiest moment of my life to realize how far I had to travel then. But again, as I said, exchanged freedom for some money, and it was very good. What I realized in that time, especially during the months leading up to my quitting the job, my wife and I had just bought a new home. We had bought a home for us. We were going to move from Mitte to Weißensee. We had signed a huge loan. We had little children. And my co-founder still had a job at that time. I was confident that he was going to found the company with me, but I was not sure about it. So I was a bit surprised again about myself that there, even in my banker outer shell, there was a little risk taker. Fortunately enough, I had worked for 10 years at a bank, so we hadn't spent all the money immediately, so I had some reserves on my account. So it was not a huge risk at all, but psychologically. This was something. And of course, this came with a pay cut, but my wife was okay with it because I'm not sure how much she trusted in that or in me, but she was willing to entertain the experiment for some time if I promised to quit it after a year or so if it doesn't work out. For me, again, this was a really happy time. I could build stuff that I hadn't been able to do before, because now with 5 days a week available to me for working on my own, that was really great. And the next step was basically still in the same year when we,
Could you please again explain what exactly Startup Detector?
Of course, yeah. That's a very good question. At this point of time, Startup Detector, our main idea is that every week in Germany there are more than approximately 2,000 new companies registered in the commercial register because it's required of them to be registered there to be a limited liability company. And only a handful of those are innovative startups in the sense that I was looking for as a startup banker, or VCs are looking for as investors. And the problem is, the data on those new incorporations is openly available to anyone, but the problem is, how do you distinguish between 97% non-startups and 3 regular businesses, again, restaurants or even passive investment vehicles, and the cool startups. And we devised a method basically to scrape all those companies, programmed an algorithm that was looking at different data points in each registration. For example, what's the name of the company, what's the subject of the company or the objective of the company, who are the founders, where is it located. For example, if it's located in a known co-working space that we had put into a watch list, basically, then we would score it higher than if it was not, etc. And with that automatic part as the first step, and a manual part, which really takes a lot of time every week to actually then go through the raw data or the semi-raw data, the semi-processed data, we ended up with like boiling down 2,000 companies to 30 to 50 startups a week, or 30 to 60 startups a week. And so basically our value add was removing that time necessary for all the VCs to get like a rather compact list of potential targets instead of having to go through 2,000 irrelevant data points. Yeah, that was new in corporations. The startup list was the product, we call the product the startup list, and it was actually a really primitive list, like our product, for the last 4 years, and we've been making more than 20,000 euros per month recurring revenue with this. Is and has been a weekly email with an Excel sheet attached with the new startups in it. So really primitive, and oops, yeah, and like already after half a year, I realized, okay, the commercial register does not only tell us that there are new companies, but also tells us if those companies receive investment. By checking the capital increases for those companies, we would be able to see who invested in what, when, not how much, but who invested in what, basically. And then I realized, okay, there are so many business angels. I mean, you only read about the VC investments, but there are many more business angel investments in early stage startups. And if you had asked me, or when people ask me, do you know any business angels? As a banker, I would say, I don't know anyone. I wouldn't know where to look, etc. Now I had a potential, I started looking at shareholder list and realized those are all business angels. Every time there's a capital increase with a startup, it's like mostly business angels. And we started putting them into a database and then created our second product, which was a list of startups that had recently gotten funding. And that was actually interesting for VCs as well, because some VCs don't invest right after incorporation, but they want to see that maybe some business angels invested before. And on the other hand, it was then also attractive for companies who want to sell stuff to startups. Because if you want to sell to a 2-person team that has just like invested 1,000 euros into their own company, there's no money to sell anything. But if you know that this startup just got funding from a VC and 4 angels, then you could now potentially call them and say, I have this really great software solution, I am this really great consultant or whatever, and I'm specialized in startups. And those were the 2 major customer groups we had at the time, VCs and people like AWS or Stripe who had startup programs and wanted to reach out to founders to join their startup programs or sell stuff to them. What's why the 500 euros that almost set us up for failure? At the time, the commercial register data we needed, the one that we used for new incorporations, was free and open. But the one for the shareholder lists, they cost €1.50 each. And to produce a month worth of data that we wanted to sell to VCs, we needed to spend like 500 to 900 euros a month. But we didn't have any clients yet, so I was like, "Oh, this is really a lot of money for us at the time." But then I realized, okay, we need to spend it now, even if we don't have the clients yet. And unfortunately, the clients came. But for a bootstrap founder, this, like, when we had been primed to work with free data and now we suddenly have to use paid data, that was one thing that scared me a bit at the time. And we were in this incubator, and people around us started noticing that we had like hundreds and hundreds of angels, and we knew which startups they invested in. Like those angels invested in sports startups, these in health startups, those in whatever e-commerce startups, and they started asking us, hey Arnas, you know, like we're going to fundraise soon, can you give us a list of angels who invested in sports startups before? And yeah, we provided it, and then it made sense to us, okay, our next step after newly incorporated startup lists and investment lists, we will have to do something to connect early stage founders and business angels. But this is the next step. What I learned there is, like, since we're bootstrapped and we're still bootstrapped, and basically my co-founder Felix is the only tech guy even on a team of 10. He has a 1 day a week help, but all the other 8 people are working in the business part, and he's still alone for the tech stuff. So we're heavily relying on like no code, low code and stuff. We want to keep costs as low as possible. And at the time we just started with Excel sheets and they were getting slow really fast. And I always thought, yeah, but soon we'll switch to a better database. But first we need to have the clients. I think he was really fed up with working with those Excel lists, because as a tech guy is nothing more frustrating than not having a real solution and working with a whatever. Anyway, but it still led us to where we are, because we didn't spend the money then for something that we couldn't sell. We always first tried to find out, can we sell this, and then build everything afterwards that we needed for it. And the first big deal we landed was a contract with the city of Hamburg for one database of all Hamburg startups. And we hired our first intern, paid intern at the time, to help us go through like thousands of rows of historical commercial data, and we finished the project in time. We got the first rate of or the first tranche of 50K to actually then, like, at the time I still had to put some of my own money into the company to be able to pay the intern, because the 50K was coming in later, but everything worked out really well. And ever since neither me nor Felix had to put in any of our own money, or we were never below zero. That was really good. And with that new, I was actually scared about hiring someone, because at the time of the bank, there was one thing that I was certain about: I never wanted to be a boss of anyone, because I didn't feel comfortable about it. Taking care of someone's needs and understanding his or her feelings, or being nice, or being tough, or whatever. This was nothing I wanted to do, and then also the responsibility of like having to have the money to pay that person. So I actually never wanted to hire anyone. I felt really insecure about this. But after we had our first intern and we didn't have to do all the work, like the manual work ourselves anymore, I realized, okay, employees are a really great lever to get stuff done that you can't do and that you know how to do and you could do, but you can just teach someone to do it for you and pay him or her, obviously fairly. But that was really one thing that from that day on I realized, okay, whenever we have the money to hire someone again, and not just the money for the next month, but the money for the next 6 months, we're going to hire someone to get more work done. 2020 Corona pandemic hit, and we were asking ourselves, oh my God, are VCs in these uncertain times still going to invest in startups? And if not, are they still going to need data from us? We need to do something. Also at the same time, obviously, events like this were cancelled. So all the places where founders would naturally be able to connect with investors from time to time if they were lucky. So we said, okay, we've always had the idea of building a platform that connects all those angels that we had in our database, but didn't have email addresses off, only their commercial register official names, and the startups. So we, like, basically in a few months, we set up Added Value, the platform that exists still today, and we basically we had intended to do it anyways, but Corona accelerated the plan by like half a year. Also, we collected almost 10,000 euros from like 8 different VCs, but not as an investment, but as a sponsorship. Like we asked ourselves, okay, we want to do the platform for free, but we still need some money to do it. And we got like 8 VCs to give us some money, pay us some money as revenue to be able to put their logo on it and to get access to the startup data, startups who sign up there. And we wanted it to be like different, like basically a marketplace connecting startups and business angels. Oh, so lame. It's like been tried 1,000 times before at least. Probably failed 998 times before. And we knew that on the one hand, we couldn't do it. We knew all the ways basically we couldn't do it because if it's too open, then VCs will think, okay, this is those startups who are on that platform are all lemons. Nobody wants to work with them. They're so desperate they sign up for a platform. We don't want to work with them. So we knew we had to make it at least look exclusive. We wanted to make it data-driven because it needed to work. And we wanted to make it personalized to, even though it's a tech platform, we wanted to be able to build a relationship both with the founders and the angels. And those were the 3 adjectives we used actually as a tagline on our platform. And yeah, the first startups started signing up, and the first pitch deck we received was good, and we immediately sent it to a number of angels, and some of them replied, some of them didn't. And the second, third, fourth, fifth, or whatever pitch decks, they were all like average. And I was like, what do we do now? The business, the startup is okay. I can see the point why it might be interesting, but the pitch deck really does not reflect this. And if we send like all of them to all of the angels, they will just log off again and say, okay, I can get those pitch decks anywhere. So this is what I realized, but I hadn't thought of before. And that's when we implemented our mandatory free pitch deck feedback, pitch deck check, basically, where we told people in the first step and if sometimes second and third time, like what they needed to do better on their pitch deck to be, so that we would not be ashamed to send it to our angels from our point of view or from their point of view, that they would actually stand a chance of receiving a positive reply. The one thing is, the last thing I learned, like when we came up with the name added value, we were so excited about this super cool pun, because we used the domain IO, which is like techie domain. But if you read it like you can read it as added value, and it sounds like the added value words. And then the first people who called us, I signed up to added val, or added val is cool. And we're like, no, it's called added value. And like 90% or 80% of the people don't know how to pronounce our name. Again, a little bit of testing would have maybe prevented this. Still, I don't know if we would have found a better name. Are you still awake? Is the time already up? I don't know. This is not much more, but go ahead. I'm going ahead. My position to bootstrapping. I love bootstrapping. Even though we sell access to investors, and we're all about fundraise here, fundraise there, angels, investors, blah blah. We have been bootstrapping the whole time, and this is due to the stuff I already mentioned. We do everything lean. We sell stuff before we actually build it. And I have like a I know what I can afford policy. As I said, I only hire people if I know that I'll be able. I used to hire people only when I knew I had the money to pay them for six months. Last year I got a bit optimistic. I hired more people. I was able to pay them, but we ended the last year with a small loss. But generally, this was my policy to everything, and it has served us well so far. Once, I think in 21, we have been approached several times from different angels or investors we worked with, like, actually, what are your fundraising plans? Are you ever going to take on money? And also the boss of High-Tech Gründerfonds told us, like, I really love what Startup Detector is doing, and you have until basically September 2022. That's when we turned 3 years old, and the High-Tech Gründerfonds can only invest until a startup is 3 years old. And he told us, like, please take our money maybe, but do it before September 22. And my response was always, yeah, but we wouldn't know what to spend it on. We're already like cash flow positive. And once we know where the product market fit is and how we can scale, then we're probably going to take it. But that hasn't happened yet. So, I mean, we have a good product market fit, but not one that we would know, like now if we spend 100,000 euros, then we get 200,000 euros back. So we're still going that route. Things I learned during that time, not spending any money on paid advertising, how to get into Gründerszene and Handelsblatt and other startup publications with good data, good stories, or exclusive information from the Handelsregister, that is a Handels commercial register that was still undisclosed at the time. Again, as I said, for my employees, I prefer the way, figure out the process first, and then let others follow that process. I've read about sometimes on LinkedIn that people gave too much responsibility to the employees first, and they basically just gave the task, and then were disappointed if the result did not match their expectations. I was never tempted to do this. I always wanted to fully understand the process first and then have somebody follow it. And obviously, some people follow better and faster and more efficiently, others not. But generally, this is how our company has been working quite successfully. Since we have never planned to take on outside funding, we don't have do not know if and when we might exit the company. We have never created an employee stock option program. We did something similar instead. We offered some of our first employees of full-time, regular fixed employees, a revenue-based bonus, basically, which has a similar effect, but not quite the same. And this is the second to last slide, added value. Our platform now, we had been running it for 2 years completely for free because we were earning enough money with the Startup Detector data to be able to afford 1.5 basically full-time equivalents to give the feedback, connect the startups with the angels and so on. And we were sending out doing marketing and stuff. And last year in summer, we realized, okay, now after 2 years, maybe it might be the time to actually monetize this. And after some deliberation, we had come up with our Zalando customer acquisition strategy, which was like at first, as I said, those pitch deck feedbacks, they were born out of necessity. And we realized, okay, and sometimes we didn't even have to give them because the pitch deck was already great, so we didn't give them. But now our claim, basically, like Zalando at the time was telling you free shipment and free returns, and it was preposterous at the time, like, oh, free shipment, free returns, how can you afford this? We're now saying free pitch deck feedback for everybody as much as you like. So people, startups sometimes just sign up to get our free pitch deck feedback. And once we have we deliver the feedback by video now, we make screen recordings so that we don't have to sync our times or call them, or then, because if you call people, then some will contradict you, and you will tell them on that slide you should probably change it. Yeah, but and then you end up 2 hours later you're still on the call. So we do asynchronous feedbacks only. We send a video 20 to 25 minutes with condensed, like we basically only tell them what's bad about it. We never tell them what's great about it, but we just go through it as this is bad, so they can learn from it. And this is now our thing where people sign up, and then we build a kind of relationship because they listen to us on their headphones, and we give hopefully useful advice, and then we tell them, you can buy from us also, by the way, the intros in the database. And our first idea was actually like, as a platform, we needed the startups to sign up and we needed the angels to sign up. But angel signups didn't go as planned. Like, we have a database of 10,000 angels and we sent them letters. Like, because we have their postal addresses, we don't have emails. And we sent like, probably every angel in Germany has gotten 1 or 2 or 3 letters from us. But most of them didn't sign up because they were not interested in it. And we realized, okay, our service could be better if more angels were there. So we cut ours like only recently, only 3 months ago. We completely switched the whole, not the whole idea of the platform to just connect registered users with registered users to giving founders access to our entire business angel database. So now they can, not the natural persons, only the angels who invest with holdings due to data privacy concerns. But anyway, now founders can see all 5,000 angels from our database and can try to reach out to them individually. And that was a hard thing because I always considered this to be our, like, the company secret, the most well kept. This is like what I thought, we can never give this away because then everybody will have the angel data and they will set up services like ours or whatever. But we realized, okay, this is too much paranoia. We need to make this available to make it a better product. Learnings. Early stage startups like pre-seed and seed stage are still very tight on money. And we don't want to charge them too much, but we need to live off it. So our payment model, the one that people accepted the most, is 20% now, 300 euros, and 80% after funding, 1,200 euros. And they can start already with the intros and the usage of the database. If they never end up fundraising successfully at all, then obviously the second part is waived. So this, I think, is a really fair pricing model. It took us some time to come up with it and to experiment. We changed price like 5 or 6 times during the last 5 months, but now I think we've been set. Also, don't try to sell stuff to angels. They have no budget or they don't want to earn money. We have built a premium version of our platform, like the freemium model. And the premium version has only, out of 900 angels, now only 1 bought it. So this may not be indicative of every product, but I'm pretty sure that it's not a great idea to build a business model entirely relying on angels paying money for it. And recently I've learned the power of a LinkedIn profile. I've been addicted to LinkedIn for the last 5 or 6 months, and I really enjoy that. And the last one here, very quickly, we have, Felix and I, even though we don't have much money, basically in 2021 we had a 50-60K profit, which we paid ourselves. And this would have been like one regular small angel investment for each of us. We've always wanted to do angel investments ourselves, but we felt like, okay, if I spend my entire 25K on one startup and it's the wrong one, then I'm going to be burnt and I'm never going to do it again. So just recently, basically just a few days ago, or 2 weeks ago, we came up with a model and say, okay, let's not be confused, insecure about what founders are actually asking or expecting of us, but let's tell them what we can offer. And what we can offer is basically 2 to 5K each per startup, and our network and the experience that they might value or not value, and then let them decide if they want to take such an atypical business angel ticket for such a small size. And the first startup we actually asked, or the first 2 startups actually we asked, because we really found their businesses promising. they both said, hey, yeah, let's do it. We can pool you guys afterwards, and we were absolutely fine with this. So I'm now not yet official because I haven't signed anything, but I'm now on the path of becoming a micro angel, this is the next step now for me. That is going to be my exciting thing in 2023. And that's it. Feel free to ask me stuff or say thank you and have some drinks.
How do you think, like, in terms of higher interest rates and recession, how do you think startups can adapt to this kind of, like, external factors?
Yeah, I mean, pre-seed or early stage startups that we are working with are quite disconnected from the regular capital market. So the moves like our stock prices coming under pressure due to rising interest rates, the stocks are not as attractive anymore, etc. This is not directly affecting startups. Obviously, increasing prices and consumer price sensitivity is a big thing. E-commerce startups, food startups, they all feel that consumers are hesitant to buy their products. So generally, so there's one thing like the customer side. It's becoming a problem because if the customers, also B2B customers, are not freely spending money anymore on nice-to-have solutions. Then there's the funding side, which has gotten tighter. But from the data, at least, from the commercial register data, we see, even though there have been, the number of fundings has been going down, it's not come down like super fast or super low. It's like 15% less than maybe half a year ago, but it's still happening. Good businesses are still being funded. Maybe at lower valuations. We don't know. We don't see the valuations. We only know that the investors invested, but it's still happening. Business angels are still investing money, and I'm pretty certain that this is going to still continue. Yeah, you. Yeah. Sorry, the lady there. Yeah, Pauline.
I'm interested in how many hours per week did you spend on the first 1 to 2 years on your startup, you and your co-founder?
40 to 50 hours a week, maybe. My having 2 kids and a strong wife meant that I couldn't work as much as I would have maybe wanted sometime. But that was actually good. Not actually, that was really good because it kept me from overworking. And I mean, I had kind of inherited this from the Sparkasse, where the mentality is more like, if it's 6 o'clock now and the work is not done, the work can wait until tomorrow. So it's not exactly the same when you're building your own company, obviously, but I try to work efficiently and not just too much. And I'm physically not able. I started a company when I was 37, so not really old yet, but also not in my 20s anymore. So 50 hours, I guess, with some evening work, yeah. Okay, now?
Yeah. Actually, my question is somehow correlated to what you explained before. Looking into the current situation, the question would be which trends might attract investors to invest in, for example, in banking, in finance, ESG. From your experience, what would be the hot trends?
Yeah, well, I wouldn't know about open banking right now. This seems like a bit old already. Everything related to ESG obviously still is a very important, albeit not maybe super hot topic. Right now, everybody on my LinkedIn, in my LinkedIn bubble, is talking about generative AI, and we're with ChatGPT and so on. Where to invest there? So I personally hope that space tech is still going to evolve a bit because I'm a sci-fi, not nerd, but fan. Yeah, those topics. I'm not sure if fintech is still like hot. Right now it's more probably green tech. Also from the data, the highest growth rates both in investment and newly incorporated startups is more in the impact green tech space. Not in total, not in absolute numbers, the highest amount of startups. This is still health. Health is probably universally still important 20 years ago, now in the future. But the hot stuff is probably, as you mentioned, ESG, etc. Yes.
I wanted to know, how do you plan to take added value to another level? Do you have any such plans to take?
Very good question. We have not yet thought about this. The next level is probably not going to be, well, we have thought about it, but we have no definite plan yet. It's not it's likely not internationalization, but rather going deeper in the value chain. So right now, what we do, or what added value is at its core, is not a matching platform for angels and startups, but it's a lead generation platform. Basically, we're providing a service at much less cost or much lower cost than, for example, consultants. You can find business angels. People would be able to, or willing to pay more, at least on a success-based fee, pay much more than they're paying with us. So we're leaving money on the table, basically, to build a relationship with those pre-seed startups, a lot of pre-seed startups, from the very, very beginning, and be present to them in their thought as, oh, those guys were nice. They helped me with my pitch deck for free. And then they charge only a reasonable amount for their services. And so what we want to become is basically then, after the funding, we know from their pitch deck that the startups need to build up a sales team, for example, and we know 5 or 10 really good consultants who help startups in that phase build sales teams. We can obviously tell them, look, do you want to, we know that you need to do it. This is Tim, this is Tina, this is whoever. They have all done this 10 times. Would you like to meet with them? Because they can help you do it much more efficiently than trial and error. And then obviously would take a commission from those, from whatever contract is made there. And then maybe the seed round and the Series A round, we might be able to sell more services like M&A consultants. This is probably the way that we're going to go deeper and more connected to the startups we already have, instead of now going to UK or France or whatever.
Thank you.
Hi, I would like to know more about your approach, how you approach the angel investors.
Yeah, so that's easy. Like, we have the cool thing is we have all the data, and like as I said, we have 10,000 angel data sets with mostly their home address. And if we manage to find them, if it's not Michael Müller in Berlin, but maybe with a more easy to recognize name in a smaller city, then we can look them up on LinkedIn and send them just connection requests and stuff like this. But for a scalable solution, yeah, as I said, physical paper letters, because we can do just like one Word document with a mail merge, and then send out 1,000 letters. Yeah.
You start with a database which you started to build, which you bought, right?
And we built it. It's freely available. Actually, right now, all the commercial register data is for free. Even the one that that people used to have to pay for. It's also free data. Basically, it's supposed to give transparency, so there's no copyright issue. So everybody can actually look up all the investors of any kind of startup by just downloading the shareholder list. And the only problem is those shareholder lists are scanned PDFs. So what we need to do is actually type them up, because even OCR wouldn't work because they're all like in different formats. And we take this as a basis to then send our communication to those angels.
Send them this PDF, the letter?
Yeah.
Without any personal, introduction?
Yes, well, basically we just tell them like, hey, Angel A, we noticed you recently invested in startup, startup 123 GmbH. If you're interested in meeting more startups that are already vetted and can be tailored to your interests or to your preferences by our matching algorithm. Please feel free to sign up for free on our platform. We do this a little bit more elaborately. For example, recently we have sent out not just one-page letter, but every angel got like an angel starter kit. It's like a 20-page document that has all the information in it that you as a first-time angel would need to know about angel investing. Everything, like we've got tips from experienced angels, databases, templates, and all the stuff. We printed this out with the letters and send it to them as like content marketing, but paper-based content marketing.
Okay, so how was the difference between sending only this PDF, one page, and the toolkit?
Not noticeable. There was no. The funny thing is, I meet a lot of angels in events, and when I say I'm Arnas Bräutigam, co-founder of Added Value, it's so often that I hear, "Oh, I got a letter from you," and then I say, "Yeah, but you never signed up." "Yeah, but I still have it in my desk." It's like this was so. It was such a novel thing. That they kept it in the desk but never signed up because they didn't need new deal flow or whatever. Yeah. Yeah.
So I came a bit later, so maybe if you already said that, I apologize for maybe asking something
No worries.
that was already said. But when we're talking about angel investors, do you suggest them how much shares they would, let's say, ask, or it's kind of up to the founding team and them to further develop?
For us, the most important point is transparency of the ecosystem. It's basically the VC ecosystem is more or less transparent to founders. VCs have websites, they have social media, they write blog posts, they are on conferences, etc. And if a VC wants to be found, they will be able to find it. Whereas angels, there are 10,000 angels in Germany and more, but most of them don't have angel investor on their LinkedIn profile. Many of them don't even have a LinkedIn profile, and many of them don't even consider themselves business angels. But rather private investors or something. So it's really hard to find them, and the only thing that we want to do is like connect people with a suitable background. Basically, for example, we had a founder once who had worked at Tesla some years and developed electric drivetrains, and now had founded a startup to develop electric drivetrains for aircraft. And we had, on the other hand, a business angel who had just like half a year ago sold his aircraft parts company for, I don't know how much, but a lot of money. So we connected them, but we never tell them like this, you should not pay more than a valuation of whatever. We're out there. It's just the connection.
Do you have like a minimum size ticket for the angel investor? And let's say maximum investment?
Yeah, we want a serious angel investor. So one requirement that we have is basically if you want to sign up as an angel for us, the main requirement is you have done at least one deal before. If you don't have an investment yet, you need to explain what your angel investing plans are, and we want to see at least 15K per person to be able to spend on one startup, because we don't want founders to be disappointed when then someone on the other hand is, yeah, I really love your startup, but I can actually not invest, but I would consult you for free for a week or so. We don't want this. We want serious investors who can put up cash, and ideally not only a few thousand like me, but a little more. Yeah.
Regarding your size ticket, do you suggest them to invest as a syndicate? For example, like maybe there are other people like ready to only invest 5K. So if you group them, if you have such a group, still like fair enough database, if you group them, that could be a solution.
Yeah, we're thinking about something for later this year, but we don't have that yet. Right now, it's like everybody on their own. We make the introductions, we provide the database. If people realize that they want to invest in a syndicate, or if the founder says, guys, I'm going to pool you together if you want or not, then that's fine, but it's nothing we are currently actively involved in. But yeah, 2 days ago, I think I announced my first 5K angel ticket, and I got a lot of like private messages on WhatsApp and LinkedIn from other founders, and I was like, is that possible? if that's possible, I would actually love to do that as well. So I'm now thinking, okay, I'm not the only one in that position, like being excited about doing a little business angel investing, but not having the money to actually do it regularly. So I'm definitely going to think about something. How can we connect those kind of not business angel, business saints. Somebody suggested business saint as a like the lower version of the angel. Yeah.
If I take your name, like literally,
yeah.
What kind of startups do you detect? Because I hear a lot of contradictory information. Either it's a company idea that has market traction and maybe 10,000 customers registered in their LinkedIn profile, or they have a product that is sold to 5 people.
There's a straight answer to that. When you set up an official company in the commercial register, and we think that the business model that you publish on your website, or at least that is visible if you don't have a website yet, in the description of the company objective in the register, if we think that is potentially scalable, maybe innovative, and probably product-based, then we'll count you as a startup. But if you, for example, what's the distinction? If you are a freelance, if you're a programmer and tell people, basically, tell me what you want me to program and I'll program it for you if you pay me a daily rate of whatever. We don't take this as a startup, but if the same person says, I'm going to develop an app that does whatever, then we're going to count it as a startup, even if we think the app is stupid. Because it's been done 1,000 times and never worked or whatever.
If you would found Startup Detector again, would it be on the weekly Startup Detector list?
Yeah, it was actually on the list because we were active already as a GBR before, and we actually set up the company. We detected ourselves. Yeah. Yes.
Okay, let's do one last question.
One last question. And then we can talk privately.
Yeah.
How come that at this time and age, and especially considering that we are in the European Union, that this network of VCs and startups is still limited to a country? Like, to me, it sounds like you are connecting Germany with Germany.
Yes.
Does it necessarily need to be in the register? Because I have, for example, a company in Czech Republic.
Yeah.
So, but investment is in Germany. So.
No, well, for added value, you don't need to be in the German commercial register. Basically, we have worked with Austrian, Swiss, Danish, French, whatever startups. But our angel community is 99% based in Germany, and they feel less comfortable about investing outside of Germany. Austria, Switzerland probably is still okay, but the farther you go, the more people are like, I'm just not going to look at it because I'm not going to invest in a Czech company or in a Spanish company or whatever. On the startup detector side, it's just for us the only feasible and scalable and a way that we know of how to detect startups is looking at the commercial register data because it's publicly available. We know how to analyze it. And we cannot scrape the web just for newly registered websites or whatever. That's one of the things. Some of the startups we detect are already like half a year old and have been active and visible, and people know of them and know about them. They're still not in our database until they set up an official company, a limited liability company. It's one of the drawbacks, but it's the only process we have right now. Thank you so much. Thank you, Maria.
Thank you so much. I learned that letters are a novel thing to business angels. I think that says a lot about them. But let's work on that. Grab a drink. Arnas is still here for some one-on-one questions, I guess. Or do you have to leave immediately?
No,
he's
still
here. So thank you very much.
As long as the pretzels last.